The IDF is set to mobilize 70,000 reservists, IDF soldiers, to expand the operations against Hamas in the Gaza Strip, where fighting remains intense. And over the last week, dozens of terrorists have been eliminated in the Rafah area, where, according to a statement by the IDF spokesperson's unit, the Hamas terror organization cynically uses civilian areas for terror activities. And against the backdrop of the expected call-up of tens of thousands of reservists, the army has formulated a new plan of action in the Gaza Strip. Amongst other things, the intention is to maintain a military presence in every area that was captured, conduct comprehensive searches, and demolish any infrastructure or compound used for terror. The expectation is that fighting will last for many more months, and the cabinet in Israel has conveyed to approve the continued maneuvering in the Gaza Strip. The IDF Chief of Staff Eyal Zamir visited a Shayetet 13 Naval Commando base on Sunday to meet the troops and hold a situation assessment. And during his visit, he spoke about the broad reserve call-up and the expansion of a combat in the Gaza Strip, saying, "We will increase the pressure in Gaza against Hamas to bring back the hostages and defeat this terrorist organization." Sadly, all this comes at a price, and on Sunday, we learned about 2 IDF soldiers from the Ya'alam Combat Engineering Unit who were terminated by an explosive device in the southern part of Gaza. But Hamas got some bad news on Sunday as well, as some of Israel's neighbors have moved to restrict Hamas's activity on their soil. And meanwhile, Israel is preparing to respond to the ballistic missile attack by the Houthis on Sunday morning, which saw a missile that hit near the Ben Gurion International Airport. The Houthis are also ratcheting up their threats against Israel, even saying that they will impose an air blockade by relentlessly targeting airports. We'll also tell you about the results of the initial investigation into what happened on Sunday morning, how the Houthi missile managed to evade the Israeli air defensive systems, and the involvement of Iran in all of this situation. In any case, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced on Sunday evening that Iran will bear the responsibility and the consequences following the Houthi missile that hit near the Ben Gurion Airport, while Iranian officials made their own announcement on this same subject. Iran's defense minister boasted of a new ballistic missile which he said, without citing any evidence, had just completed a successful test in which it bypassed advanced defensive systems. He also declared that if we are attacked and war is imposed on us, on Iran, we will respond with force and strike enemy bases. However, amidst these fiery threats by Iranian officials, the news continue to come about mysterious explosions and malfunctions at industrial facilities linked to the regime in cities all over Iran. The latest in the incident occurred at a factory in the city of Mashhad and in an industrial zone in the Shiite holy city of Qom. This follows a fire that broke out on Saturday at another plant in the city and ongoing problems with Iran's electricity and water distribution systems. So guys, we have a lot to talk about today, so let's dive into the details. I'm Yair Pinto, and this is your Boots on the Ground report about what is happening in Israel on day 577 of the war against Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, the Shia militias in Iraq, and all the other armed groups in this region that are operating under the authority of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, which is the head of the axis of evil in the Middle East. And a moment before we begin, I'd like to invite you to press the subscribe button if you haven't already, so you stay tuned to the truth in real time and never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground. The combat team of the Iron Fist Brigade is continuing operational activity in the Rafah area. The forces keep working to destroy terror infrastructures above and below the ground, and in the past week eliminated dozens of terrorists in the sector. In the course of the activity, the forces located weapon stockpiles of the terror organization in the Gaza Strip about 80 meters away from a building that once served as a school and about 100 meters away from a building that once served as a hospital in Rafah. A statement from the IDF spokesperson's unit said that Hamas terror organization cynically uses civilians and civilian areas for terror activities. IDF forces will continue to act against the terror organizations in the Gaza Strip in order to protect the citizens of the State of Israel. And meanwhile, with the approval of the political echelon in Israel, the IDF has begun sending out mobilization notices to tens of thousands of reservists, Israeli citizens, under Emergency Order Number 8. Part of these mobilized forces will be sent into the Gaza Strip, while others will be deployed to other fronts to free up regular units which have trained and equipment that is meant for immediate offensive maneuvers in Gaza. A military source said that this means more aggressive IDF action, but emphasized that the political level is still leaving a braking distance for possible developments in the hostage deal and negotiations. And according to the plan, the IDF is expected to carry out a broad evacuation of Palestinian residents from the north and the center of the Gaza Strip, following the model used in Rafah to seize those areas and remain inside them. In each such area, the forces will conduct systematic searches to locate Hamas infrastructures and compounds above and below the ground and destroy them. And as part of the move, several humanitarian compounds will be established, similar to the ones set up in the south of the Gaza Strip between the Morag Corridor and the Philadelphia Corridor. In these compounds, food will be distributed to the population by international firms or other organizations. And Israel stresses that the entry of aid will be measured while attempting to prevent it from reaching Hamas terrorists. Israeli officials noted that the change from what happened in the beginning of the war, and said that bringing in 600 truckloads of food per day, as was done previously, was a mistake. And according to the Chief of Staff's positions, the IDF will not distribute the food to Gaza and to the residents of the Gaza Strip. The population will not be starved, and aid will not be stolen by Hamas. Other organizations will make sure that the food will go to the population of Gaza. And speaking of Hamas, since the renewal of the fighting, they have avoided direct combat with IDF forces, preferring to hide and engage in hit-and-run tactics and setting booby traps against our forces. These tactics have had partial successes in harassing IDF troops without resulting in many casualties to their own forces. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu referred today, in a video he released, to the fighting in the Gaza Strip and the new plan of action, saying, "We are acting there according to a plan for decisive victory, and it has stages. I am convening a cabinet meeting today to discuss the next stage in the proposal presented by the General Staff. We are focused on two tasks. First, to bring back our hostages, and second, to defeat Hamas. There will be no Hamas in the Gaza Strip. That must be understood. However, there is a cost to all of this, and Israelis were reminded of this on Sunday when the IDF cleared for publication the news that Captain Noam Ravid, 23 years of age, from Sharet Tikva, this is an Israeli community, and Staff Sergeant First Class Yaheli Sharor, 20, from Omer, fell in a battle in the Palestinian city of Rafah in the southern part of the Gaza Strip. The incident occurred on Saturday afternoon during an operation when the soldiers were searching a shaft inside a building, and an explosion caused fatal injuries. The soldiers were operating within a Golani Brigade force under Division 36, whose mission is to encircle the Rafah area. In addition to the two fatalities, 2 other soldiers were wounded, one seriously and one moderately, and they were evacuated by helicopters to a hospital for further medical treatment in Israel. In another incident on Sunday, fire was directed at IDF forces inside one of the defensive positions in the sector. In response, the force fired a shell that apparently was defected and exploded prematurely, resulting in several wounded amongst the soldiers. This incident is under investigation. And additionally, while Hamas continues to lose its grip on the civilian population of the Gaza Strip, they're also suffering setbacks in other areas. And in recent months, after the fall of the Assad regime in Syria and the weakening of Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas tried to expand their operations in these two countries and even threaten Israel from them. They managed to carry out several actions against Israel, mainly rocket fire from Lebanon and also from Syria, but it seems that Israel's neighbors are beginning to understand the harm in allowing Hamas a foothold on their soil. So, government forces in both Lebanon and also Syria have confronted Hamas operatives trying to operate in their territory and even arrested them and seized their weapons and their equipment. This is good news. So guys, here at TBN Israel, we will continue to report on every development in the Gaza Strip. And as always, we ask you to help us spread the truth by sharing these videos on YouTube and following us on social media. You can look for Yair Pinto and Mati Shoshani channels, but make sure to only subscribe to official channels because there are many fake accounts. Now, I want to talk for a moment about another problem that Israel is facing. So I would like to tell you a way that you can help Israel in this situation. On April 30, 2025, massive wildfires swept across the Jerusalem hills, forcing families to flee, shutting down major roads and putting entire communities at risk. As flames moved dangerously close to homes, schools, and a nursing facility, Magen David Adom was already there. Magen David Adom teams worked through the smoke and the chaos, evacuating the elderly, treating over 20 people for smoke inhalation, and helping move thousands to safety. Their rapid, fearless response helped turn a deeply disaster into a story of survival. And this was only possible because of the support from people like you. Magen David Adom is operated on donations. So donations help Magen David Adom expand critical services. So fully equipped ambulances are needed, advanced life support gear, protective equipment, and highly trained medics need to be ready and equipped with all the knowledge and whatever they need to act under fire, literally in this case. So when others run away, Magen David Adom volunteers rush in and save lives. So guys, if you want to support Magen David Adom and save lives in Israel, go to savelifeisrael.com. Again, savelifeisrael.com and help Magen David Adom stay strong, mobile, and ready to help every situation, no matter the danger. Now, we're shifting our focus to Sunday's Houthi missile attack, which resulted in an impact near Ben Gurion International Airport. This story is somewhat personal for me because I happened to be on my way there to the airport to pick up some guests who are arriving in Israel just as the missile struck, and I was able to broadcast to you live from that location on TBN Israel. So, reports in Houthi-affiliated media claim that the ballistic missile that hit the Ben Gurion International Airport is a new missile, a hypersonic weapon capable of bypassing radar systems. But Sino-Israeli sources have dismissed these claims, saying this was not an unusual missile and nothing that Israeli systems have already intercepted in the past. But according to the sources, an Arrow interceptor was launched first towards the missile that was fired by the Houthis, but it missed. The inquiry is examining whether there was an operational problem or a technical malfunction with the missile. In any case, there was no difficulty in identifying the target, and the Home Front Command warnings were indeed issued several minutes before the sirens, and I myself was able to go into a bomb shelter in the area of the airport when the missile landed. However, the impact at the Ben Gurion occurred while the alarm was still sounding at the site. And furthermore, immediately after the Arrow launch, a THAAD interceptor from the American systems was also fired as the second interception layer, and it too did not hit the missile. The Arrow's interception rates are higher than those of the American systems, but in any event, the military in both countries have warned many times that there is no such thing as perfect 100% defensive systems that never suffers a mishap. There is also no denying that the missile that gogged the crater in the grounds of Israel's main international airport gave the Houthis a significant propaganda victory as well as a psychological achievement. But things must be kept in proportion, and we should remember certain things. First, this is the third time that Israel's air defensive systems, reinforced by the American THAAD batteries, has failed to intercept an Iranian ballistic missile that was launched from Yemen. Second, contrary to the Houthis' claims, the missiles fired at Israel are not hypersonic. This is a word that sounds very impressive, hypersonic, and maybe even concerning to the uninformed. But the truth is that in order to be a hypersonic missile, it must fly very, very, very fast. And this missile didn't qualify. But even for the Arrow 3 and Arrow 2 defensive systems, which have intercepted around 90% of the missiles that were fired at Israel, interceptions sometimes fail for various reasons. At times, there are some atmospheric difficulties that hinder the early detection, and other reasons that should not be publicized here. Essentially, a learning competition is underway between Israel here and the Iranians that guide the Houthis and refine their launch efforts. And as part of this learning competition, the militia in Iran and the people of Yemen have switched to daytime launches on the assumption that this complicates the interception for various reasons. In general, the Houthis are increasing the missile launch rate apparently because the American strikes are causing heavy damage to their launch and storage arrays for missiles and UAVs, and they want to fire missiles while they still have them before the Americans destroy them. According to United States Central Command, which now operates two task forces around the aircraft carriers Truman and Carl Vinson, crushing off Yemen's coast, the American strikes have led to a 60 to 70% drop in ballistic missile launches from Yemen against Israel and against American and Israeli ships in the Red Sea, and also to severe damage to the air defensive array that Iran supplied to Yemen and to the Houthis there. Yet, as noted, the Houthis still retain launch capabilities. The main reason is that their launch systems, some of which have also been handed over to tribal elements in Yemen, are mobile and are launched each time from a different location across Yemen's vast territory, making detection and destruction very difficult. So the Americans are working vigorously to foil weapon smuggling from Iran to Yemen, whether missiles, UAVs, drones, or ammunition parts for assembly in Yemen. They are also acting to hit Houthi production facilities and also to hit the senior regime figures. But like many terrorist organizations, the Houthis employ tactics that make them difficult for a conventional military to confront and also to destroy. The Houthi regime operates in a decentralized manner and relies mostly on tribal elements dispersed far from each other. Yemen itself is an undeveloped state with poor computing and communications infrastructure, which greatly hampers the intelligence gathering efforts and the monitoring of launch activities. So consequently, even after more than a month and a half of American strikes, the threat to shipping lanes in the Bab el-Mandab Strait and to Israel has not yet been removed. So this leaves Israel in a difficult position as it tries to put together a plan for responding to the Houthi attacks. So Defense Minister Israel Katz declared that whoever harms us will be hit sevenfold. But if Israel indeed seeks to fulfill that promise, it faces a complex dilemma. First, what is the objective of the response? And can it be achieved? And second, if action is decided upon, what kind of operation does Israel want and is actually able to carry out? The primary initial aim of any possible Israel action in Yemen would be to inflict physical significant damage on the Houthis' capability to launch ballistic missiles and attack Israel with drones and other elements. In addition, such action must include missile strikes or naval raids aimed at reducing the threat to shipping lanes in the Bab el-Mandaz area. And a second goal of the possible Israeli action in Yemen is to exact a price from the Houthi regime in order to create deterrence against further firing and attacks against Israel. A direct strike on Yemeni territory should make the Houthis think twice before launching missiles and UAVs against Israel. On the other hand, if they do decide to launch, they must understand that an inaccurate or overly severe hit will lead to a harsh Israeli response. In this context, it is important to point out that from the experience gathered by Israel and the United States, it is clear that the most effective threat against regimes in the Shiite axis is a direct threat to the regime's survival in Tehran. A third objective must be to hit the regime's symbols and civilian infrastructure in the hope of arousing public anger and causing internal civil unrest against the Houthis. So if Israel cannot effectively achieve at least one of those goals and objectives, it is hard to justify a kinetic action 2,000 kilometers away from our border. Such an operation, whether naval or aerial, is very complex and very expensive economically. It would require tanker aircrafts, rescue and collection forces, and a broad independent intelligence effort. Although the IDF is prepared and skilled for such missions, it is not clear whether it could inflict more significant damage than the damage that is caused on a daily basis by the current American strikes in Yemen. So on that subject, as noted, there are already 2 United States Navy carrier battle groups operating off the coast of Yemen. This includes over 100 strike aircrafts deployed at an average distance of about 350 kilometers from the coast. This enables them, the United States, to strike targets almost in real time with a speed of response advantage that Israel is lacking. Also, in terms of strike intensity, the capabilities of the United States forces under CENTCOM far exceed those of Israel, which in a single operation could employ only a few dozen aircrafts, with only a small portion of them being bombers who could strike ground targets. So to sum up all of this, the threat to Israel from the Houthis and other Islamist groups are not the traditional threats that the IDF has faced in the past, and they require creative thinking to find the solutions. The focus needs to be on threatening the survival of the regimes that attack Israel, not just the forces that they send against us in the field. The accumulated experience shows that almost with certainty, only a real threat to the very existence of jihadist regimes succeeds in breaking them completely. However, even amidst all of this kinetic action, we never forget that there is also a movement in the diplomatic sphere, especially in regards to the Islamic Republic of Iran. On Sunday, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu posted on his X account a screenshot of an old statement by United States President Donald Trump, in which he said that responsibility for Houthi aggression lies with Iran. Netanyahu echoed his words. President Trump is absolutely right. The Houthis' attacks come from Iran. Israel will respond to the Houthis' attack on our main airport at the time and place of our choosing against the Iranian terror masters. So the statement comes in response to a post that Donald Trump wrote on his social network 2 days after the start of the American campaign and the offensive against the Houthis, and said, "Let no one be deceived. The hundreds of attacks carried out by the Houthis, the wicked mobsters and the bullies in Yemen, hated by Yemeni people, all emanated from Iran and are created by Iran. Any further attack or retaliation by the Houthis will be met with great force, and there is no guarantee that this force will stop there. Iran has played the innocent victim of rogue terrorists that it is supposedly lost control over. But it has not lost control. It dictates every move, gives them the weapons, the supplies, the money, the sophisticated military equipment, and even so-called intelligence. Every shot fired by the Houthis will henceforth be considered as a shot fired by the weapons and leadership of Iran, and Iran will bear the responsibility and suffer the consequences, and those consequences will be severe. This is according to the statement that Trump wrote on his social media. Netanyahu repeated the threats to strike in Yemen and Iran, also in his meeting later on Sunday with visiting Cypriot President Nikos Christodouliadis. During his remarks, he said, "Of course, we and the whole world are threatened by the Houthis, including the vicious attack that they carried out near the Ben Gurion Airport in Israel. We will not tolerate it. We will take every forceful action against them that we can, and we will always remember that they acted under the instructions and with the support of their patron, Iran. We will do what needs to be done to ensure our security, to respond effectively, and to convey to Iran a proper warning that we cannot tolerate such a thing." Of course, the Iranian regime had some statements of its own to make about all of this. And on Sunday evening, the El Mayadin channel reported that Tehran was unveiling a new ballistic missile named Qasem Basir, representing the latest development of Iran's military industry. It should be noted that Iran frequently makes announcements about so-called new weapons and equipment that later turn out to be vastly exaggerated and even completely false. Another thing we should always take with a grain of salt are the fiery threats that Iranian officials make, including a statement on Sunday by Iran's defensive minister Aziz Nasirizad that if we are subjected to an attack, we will respond forcibly and hit all of the American interests and the American bases. Interesting. He also said that Iran's missile silos were full and ready to fire, a claim that I think there are excellent reasons to question, along with the claims that their new missiles can hit targets at a distance of at least 1,200 kilometers and can penetrate the American THAAD defensive systems. According to the Tasnim news agency that is affiliated with the Revolutionary Guards, the head of Iran, the missile is an upgrade from the Shahid Haj Qasem. The missile was itself an upgrade from the Fateh 110 and carries a 500-kilogram warhead. And according to the report, the missile includes modifications that allow it to perform maneuvers and evade anti-missile systems. Tasnim says that the missile is equipped with an advanced thermal guidance systems which improves its accuracy and gives it the resistance to electronic warfare and other defensive measures. So I know there are many members of Western military forces and intelligence agencies who watch these videos, and I invite them or anyone else to leave us a comment telling us how concerned you think that we should be about these Iranian threats. Personally, I'm not worried at all, but maybe I'm making a mistake, so please let me know what you think in the comments. I would love to hear from you. And in any case, here at TBN Israel, we will continue to report on every development regarding Iran, and we ask you to keep spreading the truth, share and follow us. And above all, don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, so that you stay aligned with the truth in real time and never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground. And speaking of which, this coming weekend, we're going to release a very special episode to launch a new series called Our Land here at TBN Israel. Mati Shoshani and I will take you on a journey so you can experience straight with us, boots on the ground, the most talked about places in Israel, such as Judea and Samaria. So stay tuned this coming weekend on TBN Israel on YouTube. Guys, let's continue talking about Iran, because they're not just making threats and promises to inflict terrible pain on Israeli and American interests, they're also suffering some pretty terrible pain themselves. Reports surfaced on Sunday afternoon of a powerful explosion at a motorcycle factory in the city of Mashhad in the northern part of the country. So a fire broke out in the warehouse of tires, and cardboard was later extinguished. At this stage, it is unclear whether there is casualties in this event or what caused the explosion. But an hour earlier, the opposition channel, Iran International, reported 5 injured at a plant and an industrial park in the city of Qom in the center of Iran, belonging to a petrochemical raw materials company. Here too, the circumstances are unknown. The same channel yesterday reported a large fire at a cardboard factory in the city of Karj near the capital Tehran. So these incidents follow last week's massive explosions and fire at the Shahid Raj port in the city of Bandar Abbas in the south of the country, which resulted in at least 70 fatalities and hundreds of injuries. This is also alongside the massive damage that was caused to this very important port to Iran. Iran said after that incident that it was the result of negligence that were related to the way that the chemicals were stored in this port, but various sources in Iran also raised the possibility of sabotage. And according to reports, the blast was linked to the ignition of chemical materials that Iran had received from China for the production of solid fuel for ballistic missiles. And on Tuesday, only 3 days after the huge blast at the port, another explosion occurred in Iran, and this time at a warehouse in the Isfahan area. The Saudi channel El Hadat reported that the site where this explosion occurred in the Isfahan area is a chemical industries complex connected to the production of gunpowder and is under the supervision of Iran's National Security Council. A quite similar report was published simultaneously by Iran International, which said that the company running the site specializes in producing flammable materials and is under the supervision of the same council. On its website, it states that it engages in the production of fireworks and dynamite. So guys, here at TBN Israel, we will continue to report on every development and everything related to Israel and the Middle East, and those who support this country. And as always, we ask you to help us. Help us by spreading the truth and also by praying. Prayer works, and this is a spiritual war. Just to give you an example, there are multiple conflicts all around the world, and especially in the Middle East. But the world's eye is always focused on Israel, because God has a plan and is using this country, Israel, to share his faithfulness with the world. The fact that Israel is still here after fighting 7 fronts, 7 different enemies for more than a year and a half is basically a miracle. And it shows that God is performing biblical scale miracles today. So guys, let's unite in prayer. Let's pray for the hostages to come back from Gaza to their homes in Israel. Let's pray for the IDF soldiers that are called up now again to fight in the Gaza Strip. Let's pray for all the innocent lives in this region. If it's the people of Lebanon, the people of Syria, the people of Iran, they all deserve better leadership. Somebody that is not involved in terrorism. There is chance for peace in this region, and the only one who can achieve that is God. So let's unite in prayer for the peace of Jerusalem.
Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org/Israel. Thank you.